Achtung and willkommen till Rauta's Rammstein hour. Well, not hour, I hope, but very much welcome to a little bit of worst to best of Rammstein, according to me, that is. Why decide to do this right now? Well, for obvious reasons. Rammstein's album is out in a few days. And that is an album that many people have been waiting for so many years. Before we get to kind of a deeper talk about Rammstein, let me just do my traditional uh, beer opening here, because obviously opinion videos such as this always demand something good to be consumed. Today we'll be enjoying Laitilan Virvoitusjuomatehdas Brown Ale from a Finnish craft beer company. So I talk about Rammstein on a channel that is mostly focused on extreme metal, black and death metal mostly. Well, the thing is it was 2005 when I got kind of fell in love with Rammstein, to be honest. Until that couple of previous years when Rammstein was first played, I was like, man, this is not my cup of tea. I was more, not maybe hating, but disliking the band rather than liking. I wasn't getting into that at all. Not at all. Whenever it was played on the radio, not that I listen to radio, but friend's car or whatever, I was like, man, this is just some rubbish, to be honest about it. But as it was, Rammstein was playing in or at Rock Festival, a big mainstream festival um, that is organized in my hometown, Turku, Finland. Been since like 70s, and it has been going all the time, kind of a lighter direction, not so much metal or rock music, but kind of a mainstream. But in 2005, there were still at least some bands that were more, say, heavy, and Rammstein just happened to be one of them. And since I already got some, I think, press ticket back in the days already, I figured what the hell? Why not to check them out? Because I was anywhere there, and it's not like there were like much rock or metal bands, and my mind was like blown, because I was just like, whoa, wow, the earth was literally shaking under my feet. It was like minor earthquakes coming all the time because of the bass elements and all that, and not just because of that, obviously, not just because of this great, light show, pyrotechnics and whatever, but because all this whole atmosphere, some of the songs, and I was like, man, I have totally kind of underrated this band. I have let the worst part of me taken kind of a better of me, my prejudice, based on a couple of tracks that were played earlier. So I had to kind of readjust my thoughts about this very band, this German band, playing music that I felt before was not my cup of tea. Have to kind of understand that I come from a very solid thrash metal, death metal, black metal background. And even 2005, I mean, it's not like I was 20 years anymore, but still, it was like probably I wasn't, that kind of open-minded about music. People sometimes, when they get older, become even more closed to the kind of a taste. But with me being a sort of a review guy anyway, I try to give a chance to different kind of music. If it doesn't work for me, it doesn't. But at least I try to give a chance and keep it kind of open-minded, without prejudice and all that stuff. So anyway, I started to like Rammstein very much, and soon after that, when I was already been writing for Imperium website for a few years, I told this to the editor in chief, and in return, he wanted to kind of kind of do a favor for me, do a solid thing, and so he got the albums that were out by that time as a gift. So by the time suddenly I got these like five Rammstein CDs, and I was listening to them back and forth, chronological order, counter chronological order, back and forth, and I that was between, review albums. It wasn't as hasty back then as it nowadays. So I started to figure out like which songs I actually like. And I started, finding, my favorites and all that stuff. And soon after I kind of realized I really like some of their music. Not all, obviously. That didn't actually change with the massive listening to Rammstein. But some albums really caught me like, man, I totally found this new band that isn't, that black heavy metal, thrash metal, doom metal. And I'm just enjoying it a whole lot. So, since those days, 2005 summer, almost 14 years now, I've been a Rammstein fan of a sort. I've witnessed them play another time, in this kind of ice hockey stadium, and of course been listening to their music a lot. But for me, as a kind of a late fan, so to speak, considering that the band started like early 90s, I kind of missed half the train. That is, only one album has come out since basically, I found the band. So it's not like I have gotten to, get very deep into that kind of a thing, like, hey, new album coming out, I'm reviewing and whatnot. So it's kind of a disappointing. Now it's been like 10 years since their last album. And of course, I have expectations. Not too high. I didn't actually like the radio um, single, but then again, I really liked the Deutschland single. And I'm still hoping, even though that might not be true, that this Mainland song that was released like 4 years earlier, maybe 2 years earlier, that this, no, sorry, 2 years later after the last album prior to this one, I'm still kind of hoping it would be, making its way to this album. But it seems unlikely. I don't know. I guess I will find next week when the album is actually out. I get to listen to it. But for now, it's all about, just making those wild guesses because that album is very, very well protected. Even some medias won't get that album even in like digital format, like one day prior to the actual release date. So it's gonna be a big secret. Only, I guess, a selected group of people actually know what this album is all about, how it can sound and all that stuff. Pleased to say, I have huge expectations, not too huge, but anyway, and I'm looking forward to hear the album. But because that will be a few days anyway, away from all this, now it's gonna be my turn to take worst to best of Rammstein. So bear with me, I'll try to just give you a little bit of thoughts what I think about this album. I was listening to the whole discography, of course, prior to making this video, just to kind of get fresh ideas and kind of reminiscent of like how it was in the past. Has my feelings or thoughts changed throughout the years? Now, lots of talk, no Rammstein talk, no beer, so cheers to you. Let's start going through the discography. So, with this kind of a long introduction, it should not become as like a big surprise that their first album is my least favorite. Herzeleide is kind of a homoerotic cover. Guys are like oiled up without shirts. They're staring at you like, you and me, baby, we're gonna do some dirty magic later on. Obviously, that doesn't bother me at all. I don't really care. That is kind of an ugly cover. It's kind of a cheap ash, kind of a thing. Like some girlfriend probably took a photo and just added some, I don't know, a flower on the background. Really gives me the kind of a feeling that this is very demo-like band. So there was this movement, kind of like new German type of industrial rock kind of a thing. And this album, I guess, kind of represents that very well. To be honest, that kind of shows in so many ways. The songs are not very polished. They are not maybe fresh even on ideas. But then again, it's their first album. Every piece of a puzzle is just, trying to find its place. And as such, I cannot really say it's a bad album, but it's very mediocre now in hindsight, that is. It's clear that these guys wanted to do kind of an industrial thing, sound badass and all that stuff. But to me, it doesn't have a single good killer song. Everything is like, yeah, I get you, but I wouldn't be signing you. So to me, this is like a long demo recording. Lots of ideas, but the execution is just not there. So I would rate this as the worst of Rammstein. Now, maybe with my introduction, it probably comes to a no surprise that Sehnsucht, which came quite soon after the first album, isn't also my favorite album. Now, this is a big step forward, actually. Uh, all the elements have gone, forward. They have progressed. The band is way more mature right now, but it's still kind of a youthful and full of passion, fresh ideas. They're taking this to be more extreme. Not maybe extreme as such, but at least the band is kind of like shedding the skin and, putting their creative minds into use, and everything is just better. Once again, this is an album that, in my opinion, doesn't have those kind of say hit songs. There are a couple of contenders maybe, but this is still, I think, kind of a unpolished version of what Rammstein was going to be later on. But this was going to the right direction. They were clearly getting those ideas which they were like putting into use, leaving some worst elements off with the albums to come after this one. But to me, it still doesn't to this day. This is kind of like, I kind of understand later on again why I got rid of this album. It isn't a strong album, but it's way better than the first album. Now, one could have guessed, I guess, any of those albums to come later on to come to take the like place number 3. That is the one of the least favorites. And to be honest, I had really hard time selecting which would go after those two initial ones. Why so? Because since the album 3, Mutter, I think Rammstein has done very consistent work. I mean, their first two albums were kind of like creating this industrial German new wave of industrial rock metal combination, but it started, find its form, so to say. And well, I have to say, I like all the albums after those first two albums. So why I chose to put this one, Liebe ist für alle da, on this spot? Well, I did some hard pondering because it could have been just almost any other CD, any other release by Rammstein. That is the studio albums. I'm not talking about live ones or whatever. But I chose this one because there are a couple of songs which are not that strong. Well, that same thing applies at least one other Rammstein album I'm gonna show you soon. But there was this kind of like little bit balancing, like, let's put it this way. If the other album is like 8.5 and the other album is like 8.6, that's that tiny different. There's definitely some really strong songs on this one, especially the first tracks are real killer material. But it gets weaker as we progress towards the end. And this is by no means this album's fault only. I mean, there are others which are doing exactly the same. So this is actually one of my favorites, and yet at the same time it's one of my least favorites of Rammstein. I don't know if that makes sense, but when you have to put certain albums in an order, it kind of becomes a tricky thing. With some of my favorite bands, it's way more easier. With Rammstein, it was kind of hard. Now, considering that this was the last album until the new one, I don't know what to expect because 10 years, and if this isn't my favorite, how can the next one be? I really don't know. Now, almost the same level with the previous one is Rosenrot. Album which was at the time when I fell in love with Rammstein was the newest one. So obviously it was kind of like the one that was taking its kind of a direction with the band. And I loved the album almost from the very first moments I got to hear it because it starts with very strong tracks like Benzin and Man gegen Mann. And of course, the title track is very, very strong as well. But also, like Liebe album, I think this has its weak moments towards the end. And that gives kind of like a letdown because at first you get treated with those all those delicacies and candies. You're like, oh man, this is just a great an album. And this is a very lengthy album also. So when you need to have those strong songs towards the end, because you're kind of getting this kind of a worn out towards the end. You cannot get tired in a way. It doesn't matter how good an album it is. Well, with the exceptions like, I don't know, Rain in Blood maybe. But that's a 30-minute an album. But when we have a lengthy album, you need to have some candy in the end. Need to have something really strong that kind of peaks up the album again. And Rosenrot doesn't exactly have it. At some point, this could be like my second favorite album in Rammstein discography, but it is not. So very much on par with the Liebe album. So I was like figuring out these both have really good tracks. They both have these kind of ending problems. So which one I should pick? Maybe different day I could pick the different order, but maybe in total this has stronger albums. So I had to pick this as my number 3 when we're going towards the top. So now the question is, which one is gonna be? I know some people prefer the other over the other one, but for me it's clear. And now we go to Mutter, mother in English that is. Now, at first I was thinking these could be my like selection number 3, selection number 4, but as I was going through with Rosenrot and the Liebe and Mutter once again, I was like figuring out like these all have so strong songs. So why should I pick this one as my second favorite Rammstein album? The reason is very simple. Now, with this album that came after Senschuth, this was already a band that has kind of like formulated its ideas. To me, it sounds a lot like Ministry, but with a German thing going on. So very industrial, way more than say Rosenrot or the Liebe, Reise, but also kind of a heavier, kind of a more aggressive or violent. One could say that this was their peak moment when it comes to being a heavy album in Rammstein idea anyway, or scale. And I don't know, this is filled with so many good tracks. Once again, the best tracks are more or less in the beginning, like the first half or first, 3 quarters even. But still, overall, there are no weak tracks. Even its weakest points or moments, I think Mutter is really, really strong an album. It's really solid, and it's so nicely formulated overall. There are like more soothing parts, like the title track, but then again, there are others like Fire, which is like just killing it, just like a gym music as its perfection, kind of a militant feeling even. So I guess I just had to pick this one as my second choice. Very, very strong album, and I can kind of understand very well why this would be the first pick for a Rammstein fan. So this leaves only one album, which I already mentioned, and it's Reise. Now, this is also an album that is, in my opinion, without any certain weaknesses. They're not so, kind of a somewhat not annoying, but the kind of weaker tracks, like the Puta track on Rosenrot. So this is more like very, very consistent album all the way through. I love how it begins. I love songs like America. It is very solid. I don't know, it's a hit song, kind of annoying almost, but also like songs like Moscow or Dalai Lama. I don't know. This is an album that I just enjoy so much because basically with every Rammstein album, at least after the first ones, um, the production has been very, very thick, very heavy. I could say for this genre, it's near perfect. And actually, I could say on Reise, it's perfect. I mean, the guitars are heavy, the drums are just right there with, perfect kind of a sound. Everything matches. And obviously, with this album, the vocalist Till Lindemann had progressed after three first albums. I mean, he did great job with Mutter already, but with this album, it's one of those things that work so much better than with the first two albums. So while not so much industrial as such as on Mutter, I still think that with Reise, the whole band is like, so intact. It's kind of funny to notice afterwards that, the pace of creating these albums, it was way faster. So these albums almost came like back to back. The band was getting bigger and they were touring, but still this came in relatively quick pace until it took a little bit longer to get this Liebe album. And now suddenly, boom, 10 years to get another one. So is it a warning sign when it takes so many years to complete? Yes, it is, in my opinion. But I still think that it could have done good also because the other band members have side projects. At least some of them have. So maybe it's a good thing. Maybe they ran out of their best ideas and they didn't want to let down the fans. Because like I said, of the last four albums, I kind of like worship them. They are so strong. They're the better, or let's say best in the genre. Then again, I must say I don't know this kind of a German industrial so much. And most bands I have heard or songs, not my cup of tea. Easily like too gothic or too industrial or just something like too much of a hybrid. Like I said, Ministry, for example, I like some of their tracks really much. And some things I don't. And I'm not saying that these are like similar, but they have, let's say, for the lack of a better word, sort of a same kind of DNA. So I'm just trying to prove why I like Rammstein so much, why I like their album so much. And this is just my idea how this worst to best is or should be. You probably have totally different ideas for different kind of reasons. You probably have your own cool story of how did you end up liking Rammstein or how you stopped being a Rammstein fan. I don't know. But this is my take. And if you haven't, just decided to ignore the band because you felt like it's not gonna work for you, maybe you should give it another chance, just as I did some 14 years ago. Who knows, maybe you'll find a new band to dig, or maybe you don't. Anyway, this is my take on Rammstein's worst to best. And now I'm gonna just take a look at the horizon with my beer and wait for the new album to come out. Who knows what gems lies hidden in that pile of treasure. Or who knows, maybe it's just a pile of crap. Until then, have a good night, have yourself a beer, and bye.